Welcome to Profit with Purpose. I am Mridul Kaul, Junior Executive Member of Youth India Foundation SRCC chapter, and along me is Lakshit Kumar, who is also a Junior Executive Member at Youth India Foundation SRCC chapter. Today, we are excited to have Mr. Jacob Mathew, CEO of Industree Foundation, a pioneering organization dedicated to empowering rural artisans and fostering sustainable livelihoods across India. With a deep commitment to social impact, Jacob has led the foundation in creating ethical supply chains that connect traditional craft communities with global markets. His leadership has been pivotal in driving the Foundation's mission to bridge the economic gap for under-reserved artisans, particularly women, by providing them with access to fair, sustainable work. So, we are excited to delve into his journey, the work of Industree Foundation, and the path toward building a more equitable and sustainable future for rural India.
Right. Thank you, Mridul. A couple of corrections. I used to be CEO. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I used to be CEO of Industree Foundation, but we've gone through a 2-year-long process of succession, and we have a new CEO. His name is Neju George, and I am currently Chief Advisor to Industree Foundation. So I
Yes.
stepped down as CEO in October 2023. So it's a little more than a year since I stepped down, but I'm still quite involved in some of the activities. And as all things are, it's a big team and it's a team effort. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'd just like to make that correction that I'm no longer CEO of Industree Foundation.
Okay, sir.
And also, Industree Foundation was actually co-founded by my wife, Neelam Chibba, who's also a designer.
Yes, sir.
And she continues to be its managing trustee. And yeah, we've been around since 1995, initially as a private limited company, Industree Crafts Foundation Private Limited. And then in 2000, we formed the not-for-profit Industree Foundation, largely as a means of working with government, also finding out, in a sense, the hard way that for-profit enterprises have a place, but there is also a place for not-for-profit enterprises, especially when it comes to preparing the ground for-profit enterprises. So non-profits sometimes have that job. So that is why Industree Foundation was formed, because non-profits very often have to do work that has been left out in the development cycle. Sometimes, especially when you're serving underserved and hard to reach communities, there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done before for-profit enterprises can get into the picture. So we have a unique model where we have to where we set up the path and do the development work so that communities can form for-profit enterprises. So what we do is we facilitate community-owned organizations in the for-profit model to service global markets. Now, to be able to do that, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. So that's primarily what Industree Foundation does.
Yes, sir. Very insightful to know that about. Sir, can you tell us a little bit about your professional background before joining Industree Foundation and how it prepared you for leading a social enterprise?
Yeah. So my background is that of industrial design. I'm a trained industrial designer from I studied at the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad way back. Joined there in 1979. I did I've specialized in product design, industrial design, but with a specialization in product design. Um, I was always interested in entrepreneurship. So in my final year, my final project, we have what's called a thesis project or diploma project. My diploma project was to do with um, how a designer can be an entrepreneur. And that's what I've been doing for most of my life, being a design entrepreneur. So I set up a design company along with some of my college mates. Four of us ran it for about 20 years. In our 20th year, we merged and created a large firm because one of my clients challenged me saying that India does not have large companies, large design companies that can tackle the scale of problems that India has. So he asked me, this is Mr. Kishore Biani, who started Future Group. He said that he asked me, like, which is the largest Indian design company? And I said, it's probably us. We are 25 people with about 150 people in our entrepreneurial arm, which is manufacturing. And I said, yeah, we are among the largest. There was another company called Elephant at that time, which is still there, which had, again, a similar strength, maybe about 20, 25 designers and about 70 people in production. He said that if you have to do a project, let's say, do road signage for the whole country, is there a design firm that is capable of doing it? I said, difficult. We don't have that scale of design companies. So he said, would you be interested in setting up one? If you are, then I will actually help you do it. So that's what we did. We ended up setting up India's largest privately held design company at that point, which was not corporate in that sense. At our peak, we had about 250 people working with us. We did large scale projects like the Commonwealth Games in 2010 in Delhi. We did a lot of projects for in retail. I think in a space of we formed this company in 2005. And by 2008, we had already completed about 25 million square feet of retail space across the country. So we were able to do projects of scale. In 2009, I actually got, well, the logic was that what we found was that we love to work with entrepreneurs rather than with corporates because decisions are taken faster. You're always dealing with the top person. You're dealing usually with the founder. So it's good fun. And there's a lot of learning when you work with entrepreneurs rather than with corporate entities, which tend to have a lot of process and so on. So working with entrepreneurs, we decided that we discovered that, yes, we were making them very prosperous, but this prosperity was not really filtering down where it needs to go. So at one point I said that I'm tired of actually making rich people richer. And can I use my talent elsewhere? And that's where I got interested in social enterprise. My wife was already in the social enterprise space. I went and did a course, a one-year course in social entrepreneurship to just it was 4 weeks spread across a year, run by an organization called Dasra. And that course actually introduced me to the nuances of social entrepreneurship. What is a social enterprise in the first place? How is it different from a for-profit enterprise? I remember, again, meeting Mr. Biani one day while I was doing that course. And I said, I'm doing a social enterprise course. He looked at me and said, does that mean I'm an antisocial entrepreneur? And then he went on to say that I have actually created employment for about 25, at that time, he had about 25,000 employees. And he said, most of them are people who've seen a white collar job. They're the first generation in their families to actually have a white collar job. So he said that, does that make me social or antisocial? But, for myself, I had to answer that question. What's the difference between a social enterprise and a regular enterprise, regular for-profit enterprise? And the definition that I created for myself, which I'm still quite comfortable with, is that a social enterprise maximizes social impact profitably, whereas a for-profit enterprise, a regular enterprise, maximizes profit, period. Their only interest is actually to maximize profit. Everything else is secondary. For us, if you're running a social enterprise, your first priority is creating social impact, but you have to do it profitably. So otherwise, you cannot survive. While I was doing the course, accountant asked me, one person who had come to take a course in accounting for us asked me the same question, what's the difference? And I gave him this answer. He said, look, I still don't understand. So I said, let me give you a practical example. In the US today and in many Western countries, companies outsource production to places that are cheaper than their own country without any regard for the communities that they are actually situated in. So a car manufacturer, let's say sitting in Detroit, shifts their production to China. What happens to all those families who've been living in Detroit, who've been loyal employees of the company? Where are they going to find jobs? And what responsibility does the company has? And the answer is the company has no responsibility to its employees or to the communities in which it is sited. Their only responsibility is to its shareholders, right? And that's also the time, I think in the 80s, when somebody defined saying that the business of business is business, right? So I said that is the difference. For social enterprise, the business of business is not business. The business of business is actually to make the communities that they're situated in thrive, but do it in a way that is profitable. So it's far more difficult than running a regular for-profit enterprise. So that for me is the difference between these two. And for me, as a designer, who's always looking at ways in which to solve problems, and this is a wicked problem. It's not, when you look at development, when you look at poverty, when you look at the environmental degradation, etc., these are all systems issues, and they are not things that can be solved with one solution. It has to be a systems approach. And as a designer, we are exposed to how systems work. Yep. And that gives us a powerful toolkit to be able to tackle problems. So that was my interest in, pivoting in a sense. So the first few years, we were running something called Design for Social Change within our mainstream consulting practice. But after a while, I felt that I would be better utilized if I was giving my full time to this. I also co-founded a company in Odisha, which supplies safe drinking water to small villages, rural villages in Odisha. It's called Spring Health. Today, I think they serve about 300 or 400 villages, where every morning, there's water delivered to purified water delivered to people at a very low cost. I think it's for 13 liters, which is enough for a family for drinking water. I think the cost is delivered cost is about 5 rupees. So it's a affordable system. And the bulk of the cost is actually the cost of delivery. The cost of the water for 10 liters is, or 10 to 13 liters is just about ₹1. Yeah. Whereas if you had to go and buy a 20-liter can, those distilleries or whatever, those I think sell at about 65 rupees. And if you had to have it delivered home, then it's much more. So anyway, we created a model, a business model that is profitable. We also linked it up with other business practices. So we sell carbon credits, we generate carbon credits, we get it certified, we earn from that. We also did some things like, you're probably familiar with what happened in the US during the housing crash, the 2008 crash in the financial system, where they were over leveraging securitization of bonds, of mortgage bonds, and they mixed up high risk with low risk and, made a mess of it. But we actually learned from those kind of practices of how you can securitize future earnings and get the money now to build the infrastructure that will deliver the future earnings. So we also learned from business some from mainstream business some very innovative ways of raising finance and using that for um, um, you know creating the assets that are required for the so-called good works, and do it in a way that is profitable and makes sense for everybody. For the people who are, the people who are buying the securities get it at a discount, so they earn money. Um, our communities benefit because we get money upfront to build the infrastructure that will deliver, let's say, water, safe drinking water to them, and so on. So along the way, we found that there are many, many practices that businesses use, that production uses. For instance, we found that the Japanese system, the Toyota production system, as it's called, TPS, can actually be applied to the handicraft industry. So in 2013, I went to Japan, to Toyota, and I learned about it. I spent 10 days there and I learned about it. And we came back and then applied it with our communities to deliver quality, and deliver quality at that sort of Sigma 6 kind of level. Very few defects, very little rejection, that kind of thing. So I think the other thing about social enterprises is that it can take mainstream enterprise good practices and then apply it in the development sector. Yeah, so I think in 2013, I sort of left the commercial consulting world and then shifted totally to the impact sector. And I set up something called the Impact Edge Laboratory in Srishti Manipal, what is now Srishti Manipal Institute of Art, Design and Technology in Bangalore. I think we've had about 250 students since 2013 that have done their final year projects working on community development programs for their capstone and thesis projects. So utilizing design for community development in a sense. Yeah, I can give you a little bit about how the systems approach works and how Industree Foundation utilizes this systems approach. So when you're tackling wicked problems, these problems that are very difficult to source, that are systemic in origin, and therefore cannot be solved with singular solutions. Just a second, I will just repeat myself, just 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry, I think you were getting some background noise, no?
Yes, it is fine.
Yeah, so now just making sure. So I will just come back to this point again. So what we discovered at Industree is that a lot of issues around development, especially when you're dealing with underserved and underrepresented communities, they are in that position not because of one singular reason. It's for a multitude of reasons. It could be education, it could be health, could be lack of access to finance, it could be social and cultural mindsets that keep certain people in poverty. Like, if you're a Dalit in India, then the odds are completely stacked against you for any success, right? Even with all the SOPs that the government gives and things like that, it's very difficult for people, even for indigenous communities, or tribal communities, Adivasis and so on. It's very difficult for them to come up in society because there are so many things that are stacked up against them. And these cannot be solved with simplistic solutions. They need systems level solutions. So over the years in Industree, we have formed something for communities that are using what we call the creative manufacturing sector. See, we don't like to use the word handicrafts because we find that that's too limiting and there's too much of mental baggage around that term. The moment you say handicrafts, you said, gaon mein kuch kar raha hai. Some years ago, the Commerce Minister of India said that, crafts is a sunset industry. We will subsidize it until the last craftsman dies. That was the attitude. And the sunrise industries were technology and so on and so forth. Even the current government, when they proudly announced Make in India, we went rushing to Delhi to say, Make in India should, craft in India is really Make in India. And they said, sorry, we are craft as far as we are concerned is sunset. We are interested in biotechnology, defense substitution, defense manufacturing substitution, and hardware manufacturing. And they actually threw us out of the room. 2 or 3 years later, we actually went back to them and said that, look, how much employment will you create in these sectors? And by that time, the government would also realize that the employment creation in the high-tech industry is actually very low. We then sent them some information. I think the Mahindras had set up a steel plant in Chennai that makes pre-painted steel for the automobile industry. It was a 1,000 crore rupee investment that employs 7 people per shift in the entire factory. That's the employment created. So if you look at the investment per person employed, it is 1,000 crore divided by 21 if they are operating the plant for. So it's something like 50 crores per person. That's the investment. So we were saying that if you look at the craft industry, and craft cannot be completely handmade, we have to mechanize parts of it. So if you take one of the highest investment parts of the craft industry, which might be making apparel, then the investment per person is only 1 lakh rupees. Okay. And for many other crafts, it will be a fraction of that. And this has the potential to employ large numbers of people. So that was our thesis. And today the government is much more open to the creative manufacturing sector. And we call it the creative manufacturing sector because we say that it has to be given industry status like any other industry, like the software industry or like the film industry or the garment industry or whatever. It has to be given industry status and not everything needs to be handmade. So anyway, coming back to this, for the creative manufacturing sector, as we call it, and here how we distinguish creative manufacturing, which is using artisanal skills for global markets, for example. We say that as long as the process involves the person in making creative decisions, that is creative manufacturing for us. So something like block printing, for instance, I'm sorry, there's some havoc going on here. Can you hear some noise? Some beeping noise from my end?
No, sir. It's
No?
fine.
Okay. So then it's masking it. No problem. There's some alarm going off there. Sorry, you may have to edit this bit because I'm just trying to.
Okay, sir. No problem.
No problem, sir. It's okay.
I'm sorry, I'm in a newly constructed house.
Okay.
And the electricals are giving a lot of trouble.
No problem, sir.
So There's somebody who's come to fix these days with electronics, now everything starts beeping with some. Hi. Are you getting any background noise now?
No, sir.
Mridul, are you getting any background noise now?
No, sir.
No, no?
Sir,
Okay,
no.
okay, excellent. Zoom works very well in cutting out background noise.
Yes.
So, what we found was that for the creative manufacturing industry, you need to take a systems approach. So the systems approach that we follow is that we believe that 6 elements have to be taken care of simultaneously. If not 6, at least 4 have to be taken care of simultaneously if you want any chance of success. So one we call organizing into groups. We call it construct. How to build the organization. So in our case, a single artisan will never be able to meet, let's say, supply to a global customer. One artisan or one artisan family sitting in a village would find it very difficult to work with a global customer. So what we do is that we aggregate these artisans into groups and put care over them.
Sir, actually,
Mridul?
you are not audible properly.
Not audible.
It was just error coming in between.
Okay. I think the modem keeps switching off. Let's see. Just 1 second. I'm in an interview. I'm trying to find a quiet place. And I don't know why you had to turn on the lift just now. Afterwards, baby. Okay. You got your happy cappy? Okay. Huh? Yeah. Can you go with Beth? Or you can stay here. Yeah. I'll just try again. Sorry, I changed the. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, properly.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so sorry that so many changes of.
No, sir, no
So let
worries.
me start again. So what we realized in the for the creative manufacturing industry is that you have to take a systems approach, and we look at 6 elements that you have to satisfy simultaneously. If not 6, we need at least 4 that need to be satisfied simultaneously. And these are: 1, organizing into groups or aggregation of people into groups. And we call this construct. This involves creating a group of people and then having a layer of professional management. So initially we bring the professional managers from outside. And strangely enough, the one industry that we found that where we can get these professional managers is the automobile manufacturing industry. Because they are really tuned into quality, they're tuned into process. Especially those that have worked for the Japanese automobile, joint ventures in India. Like in the South, you have TVS Motors, also the Koreans like Hyundai and so on. Because they all follow this, what is called total quality and total production systems. They take a systems approach to manufacturing. So that's number one, construct aggregation with professional management. And over a period of time, we shift the professional management to people in the community. So what we find is that, and we work largely with women's groups. So what we find is that many of the daughters, I mean, the mothers may have done fourth standard, maximum eighth standard education. But many of their daughters, especially because now they're able to afford working in a group, they earn enough money to send their kids to school and then to college. So many of the next generation have at least a high school qualification. Some of them have degrees. We even have one or two people who've done their MPhil in preparation for a PhD. I think that's the level of education that we're seeing now in the community, but there are no job opportunities in the rural areas that they live in. So this becomes a great place for them to be trained in professional. So the professional skills that we look for are in production, like this total production systems, that kind of methodology, in sales and marketing, in accounting, in people management, logistics and distribution. So we actually create special courses, modular courses that these people can take so that they can upskill themselves. And over a period of time, not only are these enterprises community owned, but they also become community managed. And with a level of what you would call professional management. So which brings us to the next thing, which is capacity, because you have to do the skilling. So capacity is the second piece, skilling. And skilling, in a sense, has to be modular. It has to be laddered in the sense that you start with lower complexity and then move them up the ladder in terms of complexity. It should take into account that at no time can they stop earning, right? Because these are people living on the edge. So you can't say that, Abhi, stop working now, therefore stop earning, and now you do your course and then come back and we'll pay you. No, that doesn't work. We also employ a methodology that we call LEAP, which is learn, which is, might be lectures, might be videos they look at, might be text that they read. The A stands for apply. So you apply it in simulations. So what you learn, you also simulate how that can be used. Learn, experience. So you experience it through simulations, then you apply it to the work that you're doing, and then you keep practicing it. And after you've practiced it 4 or 5 times in different situations, you sort of become adept in it. So this modularized learning, laddered complexity, and this methodology of what we call learn, experience, apply, and practice, we find it quite effective. And again, here, we take best practices from wherever we find it. So we use a method from SECMOL of peer learning. SECMOL is the Ladakh Students Association started by Sonam Wangchuk. So he runs something that he popularly calls the School of Failures. To join that high school, you should have failed your 10th standard exams at least 3 times. Only then do you qualify to go into that school. His thing is that the system has failed you, you have not failed. So can we create a system that is actually geared to you? And a lot of the learning is through peer learning. So it's a very, very counterintuitive way of teaching. So if there's somebody who's bright and picks up fast, you concentrate on that person and make that person better, and then use that person to teach the other students. And in most cases, failures have come from bad teachers. And normally your peers tend to be good teachers, and you tend to trust your peers more. So we use elements of peer training also. So a lot of the capacity building is in finding these quick learners, rapidly capacity building them so that they then become the teachers for the slower learners. And we find that that really works. Another method that we use is somebody calls it the 3G method, which is again a laddering of process, but works on removing fear, because very often you're scared of learning. So you first tackle that fear of learning and then move on to the other bit. So the second one, as I said, first construct, then capacity. The third is create, which is you use design to make sure that what you make is then desirable by your end customers. So design is a very critical component. And for design, we make sure that people who go through the designing program are able to work with our client organizations, with our designers from the client organizations, are able to prototype rapidly, make samples, create the specifications, understand the material and its limitations, and create the range of what is possible. Very often you have rejections when you're working with handmade products because no two products will be alike. But we create the range, and we create the range through visual samples. So in it, up to this acceptable, beyond this not acceptable. So that's a method that we use. So the third one is create. The fourth one is access to capital. You can do all of this, but if the people don't have access to money, nothing is going to work. Now, if you have access to money and you have the organization, you have the training, you have the design, you now need access to market. So that's what we call channel. And lastly, so we have construct, capacity, create, capital, channel, and the last one we say is connect. Today's world, to do anything, you have to use digital technology. So, whether it's online marketplaces, whether it's learning digitally, whether it's doing your logistics and managing your logistics digitally, the digital part is the sixth part of this picture. And we found that when all six are applied, when you take care of all six, your chance of success is much higher. So this, in a sense, is industry's secret sauce. And since 2020, this is our fourth year running, we've been running a program called Rejuvenate, which is a training program for other people in similar situations, where we teach everything that we've learned to them. Because we feel that this problem is so huge that it cannot be solved by one organization. So therefore, we capacity build other organizations in the methodology that we've developed. In the process, we also learn from them about their methodologies, strengthening this whole thing. And we are just starting our seventh cohort in Region Earth, the Region Earth program for leadership for creative manufacturing enterprises. And I think so far about 175 organizations have taken part in this program and have learned our methodologies, some of which they're applying their end. So, sorry, this was a fairly long-winded, interrupted explanation of what our secret sauce is. So back to you, Mridul.
It's very exciting to hear this. It's the part of your journey that we couldn't find on LinkedIn or any other social media platform. And we also got to know that the secret mantra of the success of an organization. And what do you think the role of the future of social entrepreneurs will play in the global economic development, especially in emerging markets like India?
Well, I think it's not just emerging markets in India. So again, I just go back to my friend, Mr. Biani, who asked me, am I an antisocial business? And my answer to him is that you're not antisocial, but you're not social either, right? Because your focus is on profits. Yeah. So I think the end game is where every enterprise is social. And I think what has happened is that there have been many distortions to the capitalist system that have happened over the last maybe 200 years. Capital has to be deployed in service of people. People cannot be deployed in service of capital. So to that extent, every business should become a social business. And we are beginning to see some of the bigger enterprises trying to wrap their heads around it. But it's very difficult because the existing system pulls them back. So IKEA, for example, which is a global retailer and is one of our customers, has a special program for social enterprises. They actually sell products made by social enterprises, and working with social enterprises has become a big part of what they do. Not just in terms of improving their image, but they would like that over a period of time, all their products, or a good number of their products, are made by social enterprises, and they become a conduit for social enterprises. Industree Foundation has launched a digital marketplace called Flourish. In India, it's called flourish.in. In the US, it's called flourishplanet.com. And it allows enterprises which are community owned, and not necessarily community owned, but people who are environmentally conscious, who give more than they take, are not extractive in their nature. This is a marketplace for them. So we see the future of social enterprise as the future of all enterprises. We believe that all enterprises have to be social. And it's going to be a long journey because we haven't created those social multinationals, so to say. Today you have Unilever, you have people like IKEA, you have these big multinational companies. Then you have the digital companies, which are possibly controlled and employ very small numbers of people, but control large parts of the economy. We believe that there is room for all of these to have either become social or have rivals that are social enterprises. So that's our big vision for the future.
Okay, sir, very inspiring, and to know all the visions of the Industry Foundation. Also, sir, we would love to know some of your innovative projects or collaborations that Industry Foundation had initiated and how they have transformed communities by it.
Yeah. So I'll give you maybe two examples. We started working with the Kui tribal community. I mean, the tribal community in Odisha, in the Kandamal area. It was a project, it was a legacy project that had been financed by JICA, the Japan Development Financing Institution. So JICA and the Forest Department of India had started the project, and they'd set up these production units that used that were set up by tribal communities using self-help groups and so on. The project had a certain tenure, 3 years or 5 years or whatever. And at the end of that 5-year period, when the funders pulled out and the support that the funders had provided pulled out, most of these enterprises collapsed. So at that time, there was an open call that was made to social enterprises saying that, can you come and work with some of these enterprises and then turn them around? And for that, they provided a little bit of support. I think they said that you could hire a CEO for this for 10,000 rupees a month. They called them CEOs. So like that, they had given some minimal support for this, but also gave us access to the infrastructure that had been built up. What was really shocking for us was that the income, the cash income of the women tribals who were part of these groups was between 100 and 150 rupees a month. Cash income. Now you'll ask, like, how do they survive on 100 and 150 rupees a month? And they barely survive. But because they are in the forest, they always get some, through foraging and so on. They live on that primarily. But again, you sometimes hear about, when, there's a weather incident or something in some of these places, people are reduced to eating, barks and grass and God knows what else, just to try and survive. So it's a very, very precarious existence. So we took over some of these units. Again, used the systems approach, especially when it came to the logistics part, how to connect these people to the market. But also, we found that there were units that were set up with electrically operated machines, but no power connection. In some cases, there were not even power lines drawn to the area where these units were set up. Some cases, there were power lines drawn, but a transformer was not installed. In some cases, all of this was there, but the power was erratic, and so on. So we had to come up with solutions for all of this. We ended up finally creating a hydraulic pressing unit. So these are women who go into the forest, collect the siali and sal leaves, stitch it, hand stitch it, and then convert it into plates. And these plates are used in North India. They're used in Tirupati. They're used at weddings and things like that. The patal plates, the leaf plates. So we modernized it a bit. We introduced solar-powered sewing machines for stitching the leaves a little tighter. We introduced new organic glues, mainly made out of wheat and rice and so on, which is food safe, and then employed modern hydraulic pressing machines with molds, with steel molds, for making the final product, which are actually buffet plates. You can hold it in the hand and put food, it won't leak, etc. The incomes of these women from 100 to 150 rupees per month has now gone. The minimum that they earn is 4,500, and there are people earning. The ones who are working in the mechanized units earn about 13,000 rupees. 4,500 to 5,000 is what the women who go out into the forest to gather leaves earn. But because they are part of the same unit, the profits are then shared, and we are able to pay a higher price for picking the leaves. Plus, we also introduce elements of sustainable gathering, so that if when you're picking leaves, you don't pick up diseased leaves, you don't pick up leaves with holes in it. So you reduce the number of leaves that you're picking up, but you only pick up good leaves, because those leaves with a hole will still perform photosynthesis and support the plant, but it's not good for making a plate out of. So earlier they used to pick it up indiscriminately and very often strip a plant of all its leaves, causing it distress. So teaching these sort of sustainable practices, and that combined, very fortunately for us, as we were getting into a situation where the production was going up, the government banned the use of single-use plastics for disposable plates, which made created a market for biodegradable plates. So that project is quite a success. What we are working on currently, concentrating on currently, is creating India's first forest stewardship certified bamboo. Because India is the world's second largest grower of bamboo, but most of this bamboo is in forests, controlled by the forest department, and where there are restrictions on gathering it, and rightly so. I mean, these places have to be conserved. So what we're doing right now is that we work with smallholder farmers, usually from the SC, ST, Dalit communities and tribal communities, encourage them to plant bamboo in 1/3 of their land holding, not the entire thing. 2/3 is still for food production and so on, and to look at the degraded land, the land on which they can't farm, the ones which are really on a slope, but which is suitable for bamboo. Bamboo actually revitalizes the soil. After the first year, it really does not need irrigation. The first year, every 2 weeks, you need to give each plant or each clump about 200 milliliters of water in the first year. After that, it picks up, and then it's a rain-fed kind of crop. Most of the species in bamboo can produce for about 40 years. Bamboo dies after it flowers. Most species, except 2, die after they flower. So then it's a source of income for 40 years. And what's interesting is that when you start harvesting bamboo, in the first 4 years, you might get 15 poles out of one clump. When you start harvesting those poles, the number of bamboo shoots that come up increases. So for the first 10 years, then the number of shoots it produces keeps increasing until it plateaus. So every year on year for first 10 years, your yield goes up and then it plateaus, but it delivers a yield for up to 40 years. Some species go up to 80 years. We then create a downstream manufacturing ecosystem that can absorb all this bamboo. This includes pulp and paper production, the mainstream industrial processes, construction, board making, Craft will only take up a very small quantity of this. The good thing that happened was that this work that we're doing came to the notice of the National Rural Livelihood Mission. And they've adopted bamboo as one of the principal projects for their, I think one of 5 principal projects for what they call their Lakpati Didi scheme. Self-help group women becoming Lakpatis, which is Prime Minister Modi's, one of his flagship schemes. They've adopted this as one of their flagship schemes. And over the next 4 to 5 years, we would be able to bring in about 1 million women, between 1 million and 3 million women, into bamboo farming, and also create a whole infrastructure which will actually protect our forests. Then bamboo is a great timber substitute. I can show you a piece of furniture. This is actually made by IKEA, and it's in the room that I am in. I mean, this is a sort of a chair made out of bamboo for hanging clothes on. It's not a chair for sitting. But bamboo board, for instance, is used for making furniture. Bamboo laminated, bamboo can be used for creating modern buildings, large span modern buildings. So bamboo charcoal is used extensively for the cosmetic industry, pharmaceutical industry, and the water filter industry. Anything that requires activated carbon filters, it makes a very high quality activated carbon. So we think that this will become a very important income generation thing for literally millions of families across India. And I think about 20 states have agreed to become part of the program, because the central government, NRLM, works then with the state rural livelihood missions. And the state rural livelihood missions are the implementing agencies. And we are partnering with the state rural livelihood missions. So this is, again, an instance where something that we've done aligns with the government's programs and can then scale with government support. So that's, again, so we'll get to see this over the next 4 years, whether we succeed or not. And I think because we employ this, what I earlier said, the 6 elements that we take care of simultaneously, the 6C method or framework that we call, this project has a good chance of success.
It was very inspiring to hear that the project that you have worked on while helping those women in the forest, and currently the project that you are working on. I hope it gets the success. In your experience, what are the biggest barriers faced by social entrepreneurs while trying to scale up their operations, and how is industry addressing these issues?
See, if you meet any social entrepreneur, they'll say that their biggest problem, most often, is finance. Being able to raise capital, especially mainstream capital, and provide the returns that mainstream capital demands. Now, when social enterprises require what is called patient capital, it cannot be instant returns. The returns cannot be like what you might get from a Google or from, let's say, 11 people sitting and creating WhatsApp, which you're using right now, and then selling it for, $19 billion a few years later to Meta, right? Those kind of returns are not normal and cannot be really, those are the abnormal returns. So one is the mindset about returns on capital and what patient capital requires. Our solution to this is to create hybrid structures. So in our own case, we have for-profit enterprises that follow all the rules of pure capitalist companies, except with the difference that our primary objective is not to maximize profits, but to maximize social impact profitably. Um, the hybrid structure usually has a non-profit that is aligned to the same mission, but can take care of some of the things that a for-profit cannot afford to do, like, say, capacity building, no, the training. Um, Google doesn't train its engineers. Google employs engineers who have already been trained. Their parents have spent the money or whatever. Google has not spent money in sending engineers to engineering school. Once they join the company, of course, there might be some additional training that they give. But in our case, the communities that we work with have not been to college. Now, that education and training has to be a very, very high level, high caliber education and training. So, for-profit enterprise very often cannot bear these costs. Or let's take an example of working with a remote community, and there's no road to that community. Now, in most cases, industries are set up in industrial estates built by the government because they've decided that a particular area is underdeveloped. Therefore, they build the roads, they build the power infrastructure, and then they put in factories. The same thing cannot be done by the social enterprises cannot spend this money because the mainstream enterprises also don't spend this money. Even when Reliance sets up a plant in Jamnagar, they've set up the world's biggest refinery in Jamnagar. That was on the back of a lot of government support, in terms of land at lower rates, subsidies, loans at lower rates, etc. So these kind of expenses cannot be absorbed by a profit, by an entity that requires to be profitable. So that's why we look at a hybrid enterprise. There's a not-for-profit part which takes care of some of the things that a for-profit enterprise should not be doing. And there's a for-profit part which then works on efficiency, etc., working and how they align and fit into global markets. So this is a solution that we have come up with. And like I said earlier, the other solution we do is that this methodology that we find and the frameworks that we use that we find successful, we sort of spread that. We don't keep it as a proprietary information. We create it as sort of open source information, open to everybody. We share it. A lot of the curriculums that we develop are available for anybody on open source platforms. We work with organization called Catalyst 2030. So if you went onto the learning platform, all our curriculum is there, available for anybody to use. So this is the second part of what we do, which is we create whatever knowledge that we've gained, we share that freely. The third way we try and help build this ecosystem is to create the platforms. Eventually what will become what is called a societal platform. If you look at the foundation for all the societal platforms in India, it has been Aadhaar. Aadhaar gave everybody an identity. Now, thanks to that identity, UPI could be developed. Today, you and I transact freely on UPI. But without that so-called India stack, none of this would have happened. So we are in the process of creating the stack for the creative manufacturing industry that is there, that anybody can use. Flourish.in, which is the sellers marketplace for people in this, is another example of how we are creating the stack of digital services that the creative manufacturing sector can use. So these are three examples of how we are helping build out this ecosystem.
Very inspiring, sir, to know all of that and what all. It is not really easy to run a social enterprise and holding a social enterprise and all the challenges which are being faced, and commendable job by you that how you have mentioned them and faced them. Also, sir, till now we can see that the main problem which is for the social enterprise is that the funding, or we can say the finance. So, sir, how do you engage with the private sector and encourage them to invest or support social impact initiatives, particularly in the artisan sectors or
Yeah. So, there are Um, we look at how the mainstream industry finances itself. So let's say something that I learned from Mr. Biani in the early days when I was working. I was a consultant. My design firm was a consultant to his thing. Now, I mean, it's a just pardon this slight deviation, but in the early days when Future Group was building up, the cost of renting properties was high. Retail property cost is brick and mortar retail requires property from where you retail. And in India, you have deposits, which tend to be, the security deposit that you pay could be anything from 3 months to 6 months to 1 year. And that's a huge amount of money that has to be put up upfront and then blocked that the business can't use because you've given it to the builder or whoever has developed the property. And then that builder then uses that deposit to finance his next project. Now, how do you get out of this? So he created a good scheme. He had a fantastic track record of paying his rent on time, always. That he said that my first priority is to pay my rent. I mean, actually pay my employees their salaries. The second priority is paying the rent. So he was a favored tenant with a lot of landlords in the country. Then he went to, I think it was a private bank, ICICI Ventures, and he said that let's securitize this. I have taken this property for 9 years. I have a 9-year lease. And over the 9 years, this is the amount I'm paying. Can you release this money to my landlord? As a loan, you earn some interest on it, but it gives the landlord 80% of 9 years of rent, not 1 year of rent, for him to build his next property, and so on. So he was able to scale up his business tremendously by taking up properties. So this is one of the methods that we have adopted for raising finance for the social sector by securitizing future earnings. The other thing is that sometimes finance, there's a lot of risk in this business. In a social enterprise, there's a lot of risk. And these risks are systemic risks. Unlike, for-profit enterprises. Like today, if my production cost is too high in India, I can shift my production to China, get it for cheaper. Yeah. And there's nobody to question me. Social enterprise can't do that because our thing is to create societal benefit, right? So there are many projects where we separate the risk from the investment. So have you heard of social impact bonds or development impact bonds? Where you can raise money. So let's say there is a certain outcome that you're looking at. Let's say, take our bamboo program, for instance. Over the next 10 years, the investment from our side would be about, I'm going to say in dollar terms, because we speak to most investors, most of our investors are global investors. So we need $1,000 of investment per farmer. So if you're doing 1 million farmers, if you're working with 1 million farmers, you need $1 billion. Now, the benefit if 1 million farmers grow bamboo is that, per acre of bamboo, typically about 17 tons of carbon is sequestered per year. Now, there is a market for these carbon credits. So we say, okay, some of the positive outcomes of this is that incomes are going to go up, education is going to go up, health is going to go up, gender equality is going to go up, land in the name of the woman is going to go up, and so on. And then there are environmental benefits, carbon capture and sequestering, rejuvenation of degraded land. So these are all the benefits. Now, if I went to somebody and say that, if you give me $1 billion, I will make sure that 3 lakh acres of land, because 1/3 of an acre per farmer, and if there's 1 million farmers, then 3 lakh acres of land will get rejuvenated. The soil will become better. So many tons of carbon will be sequestered. What are you willing to pay for it? And you'll find that that's actually worth more than $1 billion, much more than $1 billion. But there's a risk element here. What if there is a drought, if there's an earthquake, there is a flood? There's so many risks there. So you split up the risk and somebody comes forward and says that I will be the risk investor. I will put in this $1 billion. Now, if it succeeds, you give me a bonus on this $1 billion. So it could be a government, could be a development agency, could be a multilateral development agency that that pays for the development. But a private bank, for instance, can be the risk investor. They put in the money, and if the project is successful, they make a delta on it. Could be a 20% or whatever. If the entity, like the facilitator like us, is successful, then we also get some reward. So there's an incentive to succeed. So when a government does this, it's called a development impact bond. When a private entity does it, it's called a social impact bond. This is, again, an innovative way of raising finance. The only issue is that sometimes structuring these instruments take a lot of time. So we are launching one of these instruments for the bamboo project. It's called the REAL Fund, REAL Fund, Regenerative Agriculture and Livelihoods Fund, which is a quasi social impact bond. So these are, again, sort of ways in which, today there are funds that, because of climate change and climate warming, global warming, people are willing to pay to slow it down or to prevent it from happening. So people have raised funds that pay countries not to cut their forest down. So as long as you keep your forest intact, we'll give you so much money per year. Because in that year, your forest will suck away so much of carbon from the air. So Brazil, for instance, all those Amazonian countries, if they conserve their forests, and there's a cost of, that has to be, so for not developing that into industrial land or farming land, these countries get compensated through a fund. So these are some of the what we call innovative financing instruments that exist today. And it's sort of aligned to where the world is also going. I mean, what's happening in the COP summit, and these are the kind of issues that are being discussed, and these are some of the solutions that are coming out of it.
Okay, sir. Sitting in a room and listening all this is very easy, but what of all you have told and implementing this in the really life, it is very difficult and challenging. Sir, with this,
I wish to correct that. I think everything is difficult and challenging, but there are rewards to be in this sector. I think for young people especially, it's again the quandary that I went through. Do I want to spend the rest of my life, even if I'm paid well, to make rich people richer, or do I want to make a difference to the world? Yep. And that making that difference is very satisfying. So, yes, it is difficult. Yes, you have to go through some suffering and some hard work and things like that. But at the end of it, is it worth doing it? Either way, you'll work hard. Today, when you work for a company, most companies are not loyal to their employees. They expect employees to be loyal to their companies. But, if there is a shift in the economy, of the company is not doing well, you will just get a slip saying that from tomorrow, please vacate your table and your Slack account will be closed and you're no longer an employee. Right? You hear about thousands of people being laid off without any notice. Right? After working your butt off. And I think that, that hardship and that suffering is much more than you face in the social enterprise sector. The social enterprise sector tends to be much kinder to its employees. They also go through difficulties. But if somebody had to be laid off, that person will be laid off in a very humane way, not like how these big corporates do it. So, I would like to actually flip that thing and say that, working for the for-profit sector to some extent is more difficult and more troublesome than working for the social sector, because you do a lot of things, but here you're rewarded with satisfaction. You go to sleep with I mean, you still have your worries and your tension and all that, but you go to sleep saying that today I've accomplished something.
Definitely,
So
sir.
I want to say that, okay, this is not all about hardship.
Definitely. And sir, as a leader in the social sector, what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who want to, we can say, create a positive impact through the business or social business?
I think for any entrepreneur, it's very important that you are clear about why you exist or why your enterprise exists. That question should be asked. So, I mean, fortunately, there's this very easy video to see. It's this video called Start With Why. He's a brand guru, a guy called Simon Sinek, who made this some many years ago. It's an 18-minute video, available freely, downloaded millions of times. I would advise every entrepreneur to see that video first, right? And try and understand why they're doing what they're doing. Because we all understand what we are doing. Some of us understand how we are doing what we are doing, but very few people really spend time in reflecting on why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, that becomes a very important thing. So what is the purpose of your life? What is the purpose of your work? That is a question that has to be answered very early. Yeah. And that's a question that you keep posing to yourself throughout your life. Why am I doing this? Yeah. Yeah. So that's my advice. Another piece of advice, and this is, I heard it from somebody in Thailand, a business school professor in Thailand. The king of Thailand in 1906 or so, King Rama IV, wanted to set up a cement company in Thailand because Thailand was, at that time, Siam, was importing its cement from abroad. And he said that, the country is going to require a lot of cement. We should be making our own cement. So he formed a cement company, formed a board of directors, but he told them to go and meet the chief abbot of Siam, the Buddhist abbot, the chief Buddhist abbot of Siam, and take his advice. So these directors were a little skeptical about it. They said, why should we go to a Buddhist monk and ask him advice for a business proposition? He said, no, you have to do it. So they went to the Buddhist abbot, and the abbot asked them, show me your business plan. And they showed the business plan. The Buddhist monk said, but this is only for 5 years. Can you show me your business plan for 100 years? And because it was a direct order from the king, these guys had to go back and come back with their 100-year business plan. And when you look at things with a 100-year perspective, everything changes. Because then you're no longer there to see the benefits of what you've done or to reap the benefits of what you've done. It's your children, not even your children. In 100 years, your children will also have gone. It will be your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren So when you look at what is good for your great-grandchildren, then your decision-making is very different. So Siam Cement Company, cement requires mining of gypsum, and that's done through strip mining. You go to an area, remove the topsoil, you dig a big hole in the ground, remove all the gypsum that you can viably, and after that you leave the hole in the ground and go and make another big hole in the ground. And this becomes a polluted water body. But because they were looking at a 100-year vision, this company started, they said this cannot be an externality. It's not somebody else's problem, it's our problem. So they started covering up the mines. After mining, they would refill the mine and then plant trees on it. So today, those mines that they started with are virtually indistinguishable from virgin forest. They're all forested. And it's a long mindset, thinking long-term mindset. That company still operates like this. It's called Siam Cement Company. So that's the other advice I have for youngsters who are thinking of starting an enterprise. Look at where they will be and how they want to do their business with a 100-year vision. Then a lot of the problems that we face today, like your chips are wrapped in multi-layered plastic. There's no way you can recycle that. It has to go into landfill and become a pollution hazard. You won't be wrapping chips in. If you have a 100-year vision, you won't be using multi-layered plastic for wrapping chips in if you're in the chip industry. So that would be my advice.
very innovative and highly knowledgeable. If I talk about myself today, I am leaving from here very high new learnings and many new thoughts. And at last, sir, thank you for taking the time to join us for the interview. Your insights were truly inspiring and left us with a fresh perspective on entrepreneurship. It was a pleasure to learn from your journey, and we are grateful for your value contribution.
Thank you. Thank you. And all the best.